If you've spent any time digging into the realities of World War I, you already know the battlefield wasn't the only place where nations fought to survive. Behind the front lines, an equally fierce struggle was unfolding across farms, fields and backyards. Entire populations depended on food systems that were suddenly strained by shortages, blockades, and the loss of labour to the front. Yet what's fascinating is how many of the farming methods developed during this period weren't just desperate improvisations. Some were remarkably smart, resource-efficient, and far ahead of their time. What you're about to hear isn't recycled garden advice. These are practical, battle-tested techniques born from necessity. They help people survive one of the most disruptive periods in modern history, and many of them can transform how you farm or garden today if applied with the same focus and discipline. So, if you're watching this on Warfield Chronicles, stick with me for the next minute. Because once you understand how wartime farmers outsmarted scarcity, you'll look at your own land or backyard differently. These 6 forgotten World War I farming methods have the potential to boost yields, strengthen soil, stretch resources, and make your growing operation more resilient than you ever expected. Now, let's get straight into the first method. The first forgotten method is trench and basin planting used to control water in unpredictable weather. During World War I, many farms in Europe faced heavy rains, followed by long dry spells. With limited manpower, farmers had to plant in ways that let the land regulate its own moisture. They dug shallow trenches between rows and created basin depressions around individual crops. The trenches carried water away during storms to prevent rot, while basins captured and held moisture during the dry weeks that followed. Modern growers can apply this by shaping the land intentionally with small tools, or even with a hoe in a backyard setting. For example, planting tomatoes or potatoes in basin pockets can reduce watering frequency by nearly half. On larger land, alternating raised rows with drainage lanes can prevent flooding and nutrient loss during seasonal rains. The second method is the wartime push for deep-root zone composting that created long-lasting soil fertility. When chemical fertilizers became scarce during World War I, farmers relied heavily on layering organic matter deep beneath planting zones. They dug trenches or pits, filled them with household scraps, manure, straw, and even decomposed leaves gathered from roadsides, then buried these layers under several inches of soil. What made this approach powerful is how it fed plants from below while improving soil structure for years. You can apply this today by digging a trench the length of your planting bed, filling the bottom with compostable material and covering it before planting. Crops like squash, maize and beans thrive especially well because their roots tap directly into the nutrient-rich layer beneath them. This is one of the most overlooked but practical soil-building strategies you can revive immediately. The third method is intercropping for survival rather than convenience, an approach many farms abandoned after industrialization. World War I farmers didn't intercrop because it was trendy. They did it because monocrops were too risky, when pests, disease or sudden weather shifts could wipe out entire fields with no backup. The British Ministry of Agriculture actually recommended pairing cereals with legumes and root crops to stabilise yields. A simple example is growing carrots between rows of cabbage or pairing peas with oats. In today's world, this method improves soil, reduces pest pressure, and increases total output per square metre. If you have limited land, try mixing tall crops with understory crops the way wartime farmers did. Corn with beans, potatoes with spinach, barley with field peas. These combinations still work as efficiently as they did a century ago. The fourth method is livestock-powered field rotation that used animals not just for meat or milk, but as mobile fertilizer units. Draft horses were pulled into military service. So many farms had to rely on sheep, goats and cattle to graze fields, deposit manure, and trample organic matter into the soil. This saved labour, fed the animals, and restored land all at once. Today, if you keep even a small herd or a handful of goats or sheep, you can rotate them through different sections of your property. Doing this for even a week per section can inject nutrients, suppress weeds, and break pest cycles far more effectively than synthetic inputs. For backyard growers, chickens alone can rejuvenate raised beds if allowed to scratch and manure the area for a few days before replanting. The fifth method is seed saving as a strategic necessity, not a hobby. Commercial seed supply collapsed during the First World War due to transport restrictions and labour shortages. Farmers were forced to rely on the strongest, healthiest plants in their fields to supply next year's seed. This led to highly adapted, locally resilient crop varieties that produced reliably even under stress. Bringing this back into modern practice is simple, but honestly, it transforms long-term productivity. If you're growing tomatoes, beans, pumpkins, or any open-pollinated crop, save seeds from the plants that handled pests, drought, or soil challenges the best. Over a few seasons, your land will produce its own custom-adapted seed stock, just like farms did during the war. The sixth and final method is small plot intensive farming that maximised output when land became scarce. With many fields abandoned due to the war, families turned every available patch into productive space using tight spacing, hand cultivation and quick maturing crops. They focused on yield per square foot rather than large field efficiency. This is extremely relevant for urban growers or anyone working on limited acreage today. Lettuce, radishes, spring onions, bush beans and compact cabbages can all be cycled quickly through a small plot. Following the First World War example, you can run a 4-crop rotation through a single raised bed in 1 year, just by choosing fast-growing varieties and maintaining consistent soil moisture. These 6 forgotten World War I farming methods are still effective because they were built on resilience, adaptation, and disciplined resource management. If you want to see more deep-dive historical guides like this, make sure you subscribe to Warfield Chronicles, share this with a fellow history enthusiast, and help keep these forgotten farming strategies alive.